everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the very first episode of the TRIF3CTA Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Spencer, joined by my two best friends, Coop, also known as Jacob Connor, and David Hayes. Before we get into today's show, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and dropping a like and a comment on this video to help us start getting our brand out there. We promise you're not going to regret it. A little bit about us. The TRIF3CTA Sports Podcast is a show created by three lifelong best friends who grew up together in a small town in eastern Kentucky. But as we grew older, life separated us on down the line. Now all three of us live in different states, but that doesn't get in the way of us keeping in touch on a regular basis. On this show, you can expect to watch and listen to three dudes put together conversations that are entertaining but also informative to all of our sports fans. With that being said, on today's show, we're going to talk about our NFL awards. Now, these aren't your run-of-the-mill NFL awards. We're going to talk about the biggest bust of a team, the team that super underachieved for the year, biggest surprise of a team, our best game, the play of the year, and then we're going to pick which non-playoff teams from 2021 have the best chance to make a Super Bowl run in 2022. And we're going to decide which NFL head coach is going to make the best turnaround in year one. All right, before we get into all that, I got to get your opinions on something. I was scrolling through Twitter the other day, and I saw a thread with a pretty cool question. The question was, who, in your opinion, is the best sports movie villain of all time?
Yeah, I think this one's easy, Frank. It's got to be Apollo Creed. You know, he's almost as big of a face for the Rocky franchise as Rocky himself, and he's really responsible for the entire series. And then, you know, the resurrection it's had recently with the Creed movies, it's all about Apollo. He brings Rocky into the ring when he's not even, you know, at that elite level boxer, and then goats him into that second fight where he's risking his life. You know, he has a chance of going blind. And I think Apollo just really sets up the entire series for the greatest sports franchise we've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure. Apollo's it's like the primary villain of all fighting movies in general. Like, he's just the perfect specimen of a human. All right, Dave, what you got?
All right, so it's the last day of the Olympics, so I'm going Olympic themed. I'm going to go Blades of Glory with Strawn and Fairchild von Wandenberg. You know, these are just two nasty individuals that just are absolutely ruthless, that don't care about anybody but themselves. If you remember in the movie, they send their sister Pam, you know, our favorite actor from The Office, Jenna Fisher, to go sleep with Chaz Michaels while she was dating Jimmy McElroy. And then when that doesn't even pan out, they just go the absolute crazy route of, hey, we're just going to kidnap them so they can't make it to their routine on time. And then once that goes sour, they have their big old chase of Chaz and of Strawn. And then Strawn actually ends up shooting the Canadian mascot with a crossbow. I mean, talk about just iconic moments in movie series for a villain. And then even when that doesn't work, you know, Jimmy and Chaz make it to their routine on time, and they're absolutely killing it. And Fairchild decides to take matters in her own hand, just breaks her pearls necklace and throws it onto the ice. And, you know, she had a good throw because she snapped Chaz's ankle. And then, you know, that leads to the iconic moment of the movie series whenever they do the Flying Lotus and they got to switch positions. And, you know, Jimmy's going to chop off Chaz's head with his ice skate, but, you know, they pull it off. And that's why, you know, Will Ferrell and, Napoleon Dynamite, I'm forgetting his name right now, but
Is it Jonathan Heater? Is that his name?
Yeah, they are just phenomenal in that movie. It's an all-time favorite.
Yeah, Will Ferrell is one of the more, I would say, diverse character method actors of all time. I mean, he can just play so many characters. They're all kind of the same at some point, but they're all kind of different still. They have their own little, you know, nuances that makes it great. And he's so funny. Yeah. And I do not know how they get through a movie without just laughing the entire time. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
For me,
yeah,
my
Will
biggest
Ferrell's
sports
definitely
villain.
one of those. Say Will Ferrell is definitely one of those characters you either love him or you hate him, and I love him. I think he's hysterical.
I love him too. one of my favorite movie villains would have to be from Varsity Blues, which is one of my favorite movies, period, of all time. Bud Kilmer, legendary head football coach of the West Canaan Coyotes, star quarterback, goes down with an injury. Jonathan Moxon comes in, just giving John Moxon hell the entire movie. And then finally at the end, threatens to pull a scholarship from Brown University, which who knows what kind of power Texas high school football coaches have over their kids. But it seemed so real to me as a kid growing up watching that movie. But like at the end, when they all just revolt against him, come out, win the game, Billy Bob scores the touchdown, Tweeter's drinking beer in the end zone. It's an awesome movie. And it's a great resolution to a big problem that they had in that county or that little small town in Texas. But Bud Kilmer is definitely one of my favorites.
What I love about Coach Kilmer, too, is it's not just the football team. It is the entire town, like you said. I mean, he's a dictator over that entire community, and I agree with you. He's a great villain.
Yeah, for sure. Moving right along to the main reason we're here today. We're going to start off with our NFL awards. NFL is a long, grueling season. We've been watching football since the early fall. Super Bowl just wrapped up a couple weeks ago with the Rams defeating the Bengals 23-20. I'm brokenhearted about it, but the Bengals, they overachieved. That's not a secret. The Rams had a really good season, really good year. They were literally built to win the Super Bowl, and that's kind of why I'm not gonna, dwell on it too much. But in your all's opinions, our first NFL award is going to be the biggest bust of a team. What team do you think underachieved heavily throughout the NFL season this year?
Yeah, I've got the Washington football team, and we'll focus on the on-field stuff, but they fell off the field as well. I mean, the name change was a mess, and really a failure twice. They couldn't even get it right in one try, and they dropped the ball in the second one as well. Then you got the Snyder investigation. I mean, there's just a lot going on in Washington. But on the field, this was a decent team. I mean, they won the division last year, 7-10. They were a playoff team. Brought in some big-time free agents. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Curtis Samuel, both expected to elevate that offense, and we knew the defense was up and coming already. Preseason, number 2 D-line in the NFL, number 6 O-line. That's what we were expecting from this team. They've got young playmakers on both sides of the ball. Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson. Cameron Curl at safety. Looks like he's going to be a star. And they just weren't good. Finished the season 7-10, but they weren't. It wasn't a good 7-10. They won 5 of their games by 7 points or less. 25th in the league in point differential. Yeah, they had some injuries, but this team still underperformed from where they should have been. Quarterback play and secondary, both in the bottom half of the league. And they got to improve in the offseason. I think Jimmy G lands there. There's some rumblings right now about Chase Young for Jimmy G straight up. I don't know if it'll happen. After the start to the season Chase Young had, that stock might be down enough. And, Garoppolo, he's been a playoff quarterback, right? He's getting his teams there. And I think they're pretty comparable teams in kind of the way they're built, where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. This is a quarterback league. I think it's hard to find a good quarterback to help you win football games. I love Chase Young as a pass rusher, but I may be wrong in saying this. It's going to be easier to find a pass rusher with not the same qualities as Chase Young, but good enough qualities as Chase Young that may not. It's not Chase Young, but it's really, really, really difficult to find a quarterback to help get you to the playoffs and win playoff games consistently. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo is one of those quarterbacks in the league whose names are being floated around as possible departures from their current team. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that a team like Washington could use, and it would put them in the conversation to win their division next year.
Yeah, as our resident Washington Commanders fan on the show, I have to agree. I think it's easy to say that, just from even a fantasy perspective, the Washington football team defense was probably a top 5 team off the board in almost every fantasy draft after their season in 21. I mean, they were absolutely loaded, especially that front four. And just talk about underperforming. And, we knew that when we signed Fitzmagic that he's 38, going to be 39. He's good, but, might not win a Super Bowl with him, but he should be better than Taylor Heineke at least. And, when he went down in that first game and then Heineke just takes over, yeah, it's a long season. The fan base has been through a lot the last few years ever since Snyder took over. But I really hope we don't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's a decent game manager, and game managers win games. But do game managers win you Super Bowls? They got to be pretty damn good at it. So I think, I'm happy with our Chase Young pick at number 2 a few years ago. We didn't miss. The guy's good. It's just, I agree. We're a quarterback away. We got the stars. We got the cap room. It's just, I hope we don't give up the ship just to land a good game manager.
Yeah, that I can see where you're coming from on there, especially. Dave, who you have as your biggest bust of a team from the season?
Yeah, so I'm going a different route with this. I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts. Now, they had a rough start. I mean, they started 1-4, and it wasn't looking good for them. They traded for Carson Wentz in the offseason to reunite him and Frank Wright. And, they just not really a lot of buzz about them in the offseason. But what really happened in my eyes is after they started 1-4, they went 8-2 to end 2021 with rattling off wins against the 49ers, the Bills, the Pats, and the Cardinals. Their only 2 losses were to the Titans by 3 in overtime. They lost to the Bucks by 7. I mean, those are 2 quality losses on top of a lot of quality wins. And a lot of people had them as Super Bowl contenders going into the playoffs. And all they had to do was beat an average Raiders team or beat the worst team in the league in the Jaguars. And, we all watched along on that Week 18 madness where, if the Colts were to lose, then if the Steelers had to win, and then if the Chargers and the Raiders tied. And, we don't get any of that drama if the Colts they just don't screw up. And, especially having the leading rusher in Jonathan Taylor, before the year, it was all Derrick Henry. He's the king, which, he was the king before he got hurt. But Jonathan Taylor put himself on the map. Listen off his stats, 1,800 rushing yards, 18 touchdowns. And the stat that I get blown away with is 107 first downs. You look at that number, maybe it's not big stat to anybody, but when you look at second place of Antonio Gibson with 65, I mean, that's insane to think that he got, 43 more first downs than the next guy. That math is off, but don't fact check me. But I mean, and I think Carson Wentz, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I mean, I think he gets a lot of shit. I think of him kind of like Bo Jackson. He's too strong for his own good. He extends plays almost to his downfall because he thinks he's invincible because he's got the play to this point, and then he just chucks it or does something stupid and turns the ball over. But, I really thought that they were going to make a deep run in the playoffs. They just had to get there, and they fell flat on their face.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jonathan Taylor, stud. I mean, like you said, the numbers he put up are just absolutely insane for any running back, especially one as young as he is on that team that's really looking for their identity. And I think he found it for him this season. But Wentz is the question mark. His play wasn't bad. I mean, I think you look at most stats and he's around that 10 to 12 range, which should be good enough, right? I mean, that gets you in. he's just missing the moments. He's not stepping up in those clutch situations. He's letting the worst team in the NFL beat them in the final week of the season with playoffs on the line. So I think he's a decent quarterback. I think he can be an NFL starter, but I don't know that Indianapolis wants to stay with him. I think they're looking for somebody that can have those moments, and they might be moving on.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. You know, when you talk about the game there at the end of the year where the Chargers and Raiders, you know, had a tie to both get in,
They should have kneeled off.
That would have been awesome. Nobody wanted to see that, but once it went into overtime was, you know, the time was ticking down, and there was a chance, and we all thought it was going to happen. And I think I can't remember correctly. I think that the Chargers may have tried to run the ball or something like that, or I don't know. But anyway, something made the decision to end the game for the Raiders. It's something that the Chargers did. I can't quite remember it, but that would have been something that would have been great to see. In my opinion, the biggest bust of biggest bust of a team for this year has to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Here's why. When you think about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're defending Super Bowl champions. They have literally the greatest quarterback of all time on their team in Tom Brady. Preseason coming into the year, they're ranked number 2, just behind the Kansas City Chiefs, rightfully so. At the end of the season, you know, they finished second in total offense. You know, they averaged 406 yards a game. They led the league in passing yards. You know, Tom Brady had the best year of his career statistically in the regular season. They led in yards per game. They were second in points overall with 30, just a tick over 30 points a game. And the bottom line is they have Tom Brady. You know, when you're that good of a team and you have Tom Brady, you should win the Super Bowl. But they didn't. Defensively, you know, they don't jump off on paper and say, hey, we're a great defense, but they have really good defensive players. They're 5th in points per game, only giving up around 20 points per game. You know, in the NFL, you're giving up 20 points. Those guys are, you know, top 1% in the league when you're playing in the NFL. So 20 points a game is really good. They're middle of the pack in yards per game, 3rd in rushing defense, giving up 92 yards per game. So running backs against the Buccaneers defense, they can't even break the century mark. Plus 10 in turnover differential, which ranks 6th in the NFL. So obviously, you know, they're not turning the ball over that much. Defense has takeaways, and if Tom Brady is considered the GOAT, they have to be able to at least make it to the Super Bowl at that point. At 44 years old, he passed for a record number of yards, the most in his career. They returned just about every player from the Super Bowl winning team that I know of. But, you know, some injuries, Chris Godwin going down with injury. We all know the Antonio Brown situation, how that played out. But I think some injuries and some distractions on the sideline may have been the straw that the final straw for everyone there in that organization. That, you know, they were done. They were tired of dealing with the bull crap, dude. And I think that is a big reason why they are they're the biggest underachiever in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the injury bug, they just destroyed them. I mean, just watching them, was it the Packers that destroyed them? Was it like week 3 or week 4? When they went and signed Richard Sherman off of the streets just to try and help that secondary. I mean, they were decimated by injuries this year.
Yeah, for sure.
I think looking at that Rams game in the playoffs that they lost, it, you know, really came down to their efficiency. They'd been good all year. They'd put up the numbers, and Brady still put his numbers up, right? Over 300 yards in that game, but averaging less than 4 yards a carry. Brady had 24 incompletions. I mean, he was somewhere around that 60% mark. I think just a little under. And that's under where he was performing all season, and they came just a little bit short, you know, 3-point game. And you can't say the guy doesn't live up to moments. I mean, that's insane. But he had one game where he wasn't on his best and ended up paying for it.
Now we're going to move on to the biggest bust of a player for the season. There are always players out there who have high ceilings preseason that just don't live up to their capabilities per se. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I got to go Baker Mayfield. And not just this season, like you said, a lot of players have high ceilings we expect, and we keep expecting it from him. I mean, it's been every season we're expecting him to have this breakout. We keep including him in those conversations about the best young quarterback talent in the NFL, and he's just not living up to it. This season, he only played 14 games, but in those games, 27th in QBR, 27th in completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, 13 picks. Those numbers just are not going to lead your team to success. And Cleveland has a really good football team. They have a lot of components that can allow them to compete. Yeah, they're in a tough division, but, a lot of teams are. That's the way the NFL works, and they have to find a way to elevate his play because I don't see the Browns moving on from him. But you look at other guys in that same range of performance, Taylor Heineke, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, they're all either right above or below him. And all those teams are the ones we're talking about targeting quarterbacks this offseason. He's got the intangibles, but he's just not performing. He's never had 4,000 pass yards in a season. He's never had 30 touchdowns. I don't think Baker Mayfield can be above average in this league.
I would have to agree with that statement. I do think they need some help on the edge when it comes to wide receivers. Odell, we obviously said wasn't a really good fit. Congrats to Odell for being on the Super Bowl team, but Jarvis Landry is, in my opinion, past his prime. So they don't have a lot of options out there to throw the ball to. I think Baker Mayfield is a gunslinger type quarterback. He's going to have turnovers. I do think they have could be the best running game in the NFL when both running backs stay healthy. Their defense is stout. They've been stout for a while. They're built to win the championship on the defensive side of the ball. But like we mentioned earlier, this is a quarterback league. If you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to be in any contention for a championship.
All right, so I'm going to have to take the opposite argument here, and I think Baker got a bad rap. I think media has always been they don't like his antics. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's just been had some unfortunate situations. He's clearly hurt this year, playing through some injuries, as all good leaders do. Can't make any excuses, try and play through it. But then he also loses one of his best short down opportunities or checkdowns in Kareem Hunt for almost the entire year. We know the whole saga with him and OBJ and how there was just clearly no relationship there, and Jarvis Landry missed some games. So I think they definitely got to get him some help. Because I agree with Jacob, they're not going to move on from him because I think the infamous jersey with all the quarterback names, starting with Tim Couch. I think they're finally past that. So I think Baker is their guy for at least the next few years, but I think they just got to get him some help. And, if they stay healthy, Chubb and Hunt, they are the two-headed dragon. I mean, that's one of the best offensive rushing attacks in the league when they're at full force. So Baker just needs some help.
Well, Dave, you seem to like Baker Mayfield. Who did you not like this season?
So this one, it's a stretch. I know it's a stretch, but going into all my fantasy drafts, I had high hopes for this kid. I'm going with Trey Sermon for the 49ers. He's a third-round draft pick out of the Ohio State University. They've produced some big-name running backs here in the past few years. And, him going to the 49ers, them investing a high-round pick for him, he was going to be behind Raheem Mostert coming into the league. But I thought this kid was just going to come in. We all know the 49ers offense is run, run, run. They're probably the most run-heavy team in the league. And I was like, it seems like every game the 49ers, Shanahan loves giving the ball to someone different. And I thought this guy's going to come in and just dominate. So, I invested a couple draft picks in him in some of my different fantasy leagues. But just listen to his last 3 games at Ohio State here. So, granted, this is COVID year, so maybe not facing the best competition, but going against a 2-5 Michigan State, he had 10 carries for 112 yards and a tutty. And the Big Ten championship against number 10 Northwestern, 29 carries, 331 yards, and 2 scores. And the college football semifinal against Clemson, 31 carries for 193, and he had 4 catches for 60. I mean, the last 2 games, you're talking the Big Ten championship, guaranteed to go to the playoff, and then you're playing against Clemson. Not playing against duds. The guy is good. Gets the 3rd-round pick, and then you're going to tell me that he gets beat out by Elijah Mitchell, who's a 6th-rounder out of Louisiana. That right there just tells me, man, he just busted. Elijah Mitchell, no offense to him, he had a great rookie campaign, but he, before the season started, I would have thought Trey Sermon would have had Elijah Mitchell, and Elijah Mitchell would have had Trey Sermon. Elijah Mitchell had 963 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, and Trey Sermon had 41 for 167 yards and a touchdown. I think that right there, just the landscape completely flipped for a guy that probably thought he was going to be the dude after Monster went down in week 1.
Yeah, I had Elijah Mitchell in a lot of my fantasy teams. Had a very, very good season. To be quite honest with you, the Trey Sermon, I didn't even ever see his name pop up on stat sheets. Like he was just non-existent at some point. I guess that's, a credit to maybe, Elijah Mitchell carrying the load, Deebo Samuel getting a more revolutionized role as a wide receiver / running back. Deebo is, an unbelievable talent. But for me personally, we're all 3 big fantasy football league players. We play in our own fantasy league. We take it, extremely serious. But every year, you see the same names pop up at the top. And this name has popped up at the top, since he's been in the league, and that is Christian McCaffrey. It's not necessarily all his fault, but he's always been, usually your number 1 overall draft pick. He is pretty much the Carolina Panthers offense. He's pretty much their whole team. But injuries are piling up on him. He's been there for 5 years. He's only played in 10 games the last 2. Just 6 touchdowns rushing, 667 yards in 2 seasons. But he's a great running back, but he's not a primary runner. They love using him in the passing game. But even then, he's had 2 receiving touchdowns the last 2 seasons and only 492 receiving yards. That's just, to me, I know it's an injury thing, but you want to see a guy with that talent stay healthy long term. And maybe it's a usage issue. Maybe the Carolina Panthers are like, hey, we got to use this guy, and it's their fault that he's getting injured all the time. But he is definitely the biggest bust, at least the last 2 years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I've had a lot of stock in Christian McCaffrey in the fantasy world, and it's really just, disappointing. You feel bad for the guy because he's such a likable player, such a good work ethic. Kid gives everything he's got, and unfortunately, that body's broke down on him, and I think a lot of that is because of the usage he's had. Like you said, he was an every down back. There were projections that he was 100 catch running back. That was a number that was realistic for him, but it's just hard for running backs to stay healthy in the NFL nowadays. We've seen that this year. We've already touched on Kareem Hunt. We've already touched on Derrick Henry. It's just such a physical game that these guys struggle to maintain their health year over year, especially when they're getting the volume that somebody like McCaffrey gets.
Yeah, I actually consider myself pretty lucky. I've never had a number 1 overall pick in fantasy, so I've never had the conundrum of, do I pick CMC? Because he's burned quite a few people the past 2 years. So I think he gets moved this offseason. I think the Panthers know that they probably could get a decent amount for him. Because I forget the guy who played for him this year, but he did all right. And
Chuba Hubbard.
I think they have, Chuba. And I was like, I think they might move away from him just to try and get some pieces to help out if Sam Darnold's the guy going forward, trying to help get some more pieces around him. So,
yeah. So, flipping the switch a little bit, we're going to move to our biggest surprise of a team this year. So, obviously, football, the NFL, never really works out the way we think it does. This year is no exception. So, we're going to roll with Coop. Give us your NFL award for the biggest surprise team.
Yeah, I think this one we can all agree on. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Super Bowl runner-up. I know you love hearing that, Frank. But this was a team that they weren't supposed to be there. Consistently a bottom 10 team, preseason power rankings. Well, I think 6 combined wins over the 2 seasons prior. 6th in strength of schedule. I don't know how the Bengals did it, but they did. Everybody stepped up. Jamar Chase had a rookie season nobody was expecting. At the draft, everybody was like, what is Cincinnati doing? They need a lineman. Burrow's injured. Why are they getting another receiver? Burrow stepped up. Amazing play this year. He looked like an elite quarterback. Trey Hendrickson, biggest free agent signing of last offseason with the impact and success that he, allowed his team to have. Joe Mixon stayed healthy. Last year he was banged up a lot, and I think T. Higgins took a big step forward. That entire team just overperformed. One stat that stood out to me, their defense, the improvement it made, 17 sacks in 2020, 42 sacks this year. And I think that they have the core and the talent to keep improving. And, we'll see them in the playoffs for many years to come.
I sure hope you're right. I really do. Trey Hendrickson has become quietly one of my favorite players. I'll jump in here, and just to save us a little time, I'm going to agree with Coop. The Cincinnati Bengals are by far head and shoulders above everyone else when it comes to preseason expectations as compared to postseason success. Preseason, they were ranked the number 28th team in the league by ESPN. We were just above the Jets, Jaguars, Lions, and Texans. Now, the 4 names I just mentioned deserve to be at that bottom of that list, and now we know why, because they're just right now at this point in time dumpster fires of organizations. And I would put the Bengals in that situation. Prior to drafting Joe Burrow, we were a dumpster fire of an organization, and there was I think drafting him was the turning point, and drafting Jamar Chase last year, drafting Logan Wilson, signing Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, all those guys coming together in one season. It has helped that team change the culture. And that's the thing. Zach Taylor, coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree, he's not going to be somebody that jumps out at you. The dude was a quarterback coach. He wasn't even an offensive coordinator when he got hired in Cincinnati. But like you said, 6 wins in 2 years, and all of a sudden, boom, you're in the Super Bowl. And you didn't get there by accident. You obviously had to win to get there. In a division that the Bengals play in with, Lamar Jackson, Ben, even a late career Ben Roethlisberger, he can still beat you at any point in any game you play in. They still had to win games to get there. So, like you said, I had no idea how they did it. And especially it's so remarkable when you think about the Swiss cheese of an offensive line that he had to work with. And it's well below average, and that's putting it lightly. There are, a couple of pieces there that I feel like they should keep, but we all know what they need to do from this point out, because they've proven it. They can get there without it. Now they can go and prove it that they can win it with the addition of a couple of key pieces up front.
Yeah, they do have the most cap room of any playoff team. So exciting to see what they're going to do this offseason.
Yeah, it's incredible they made it to the Super Bowl with, what was it? Burrow took 27 sacks in the playoffs. It just, you go get 1 or 2 linemen and shore that up. They're going to be a force for years. But jumping into mine, I'm going to go the Arizona Cardinals. First off, for 2 reasons. Them starting off 10-2. They went out and got J.J. Watt. They got A.J. Green. They already had Kyler and Hop. But they were in the toughest division coming into the season with the Rams, 49ers. Everybody thought the Seahawks were going to be good. I don't really think anybody was expecting the Cardinals, after week 12 to be in first place in the NFC. And then, as time goes on, Kyler gets hurt. That's kind of the biggest dig against him and his size, that he's easy to get hurt. But even then, Colt McCoy, my boy Colt McCoy, who is arguably the best backup in the league, comes in and starts 3 games and goes 2-1. Granted, it was against the Panthers and the Bears, and I forget the other third team. But to even keep that ship going in the right direction, they were another team that were Super Bowl favorites going into the playoffs. And then Kyler comes back, and they finish the season 1-4, which, now we see it now where we have this drama between Kyler and management. He's saying that he's being the scapegoat from them underperforming in the playoffs. Well, newsflash, Kyler, you're the quarterback. You kind of sign up for that when you want to play that position. But, if you don't want any blame for losses, I know a team that's really used to losing, and we would love to have you. We got a new team. Our jerseys are pretty sweet now. We might be getting a new owner if the legal system does their thing right, So if you're looking for a new team, Kyler, the Washington Commies, don't sleep on them.
Oh yeah, man, I can feel it. Kyler Murray, watching him play, he's like watching, a really, really good high school football player. When you're watching a high school football player like that just tear up a defense, like with his legs, and he's so little running around through there, but he's doing it to NFL teams. So, credit to Kyler Murray. I know there's a lot of animosity between him and maybe the organization, but hopefully that gets worked out. So, because, the Arizona Cardinals, that's a they've been in Super Bowls before. They've had really good players. There's something there, and we need teams like the Arizona Cardinals to be good, because I'm tired of seeing the same teams buy Super Bowls. So,
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit from team to player, who is your biggest surprise of a player this year? We'll start with Coop.
I got to go with another rookie, Micah Parsons. We knew what he was capable of, but offensive player or rookie of the year on the defensive side of the ball, just absolute impact player right away. And the Cowboys didn't have the best defense, but between him and Trayvon Diggs, they probably had 2 of the most electric defensive players in the NFL this year. The way that they can utilize him differently, he can be an edge rusher. He can be an off-the-ball linebacker. He just really showed us that you can still have these versatile positionless players in the NFL, and I think he's going to be, a Pro Bowler for years to come.
Yeah, I would agree. Watching those 2 guys on that defensive side of the ball for the Cowboys, who are, in my opinion, the honorable mention for the biggest bust of a team, just throwing that out there. All offensive categories, they were ranked number 1 into the season. So shout out to Mike McCarthy. Dak Prescott is never going to win a Super Bowl. Hot take. Dave, who is your biggest surprise of a player this year?
Yeah, so I'm going to stick with the Cardinals theme here. I'm going to go James Conner. I know that he was an off-season acquisition, but pretty much after his rookie year with the Steelers, he was written off as kind of a bust. I don't think he didn't really get a big contract with the Cardinals, and they already had Chase Edmonds, who I think everybody kind of pegged him as a starter. And the guy just came in there, and granted, they have the explosive offense, but he just got the job done for them in the goal line. I think looking at his stats, total for the year, he had 750 yards rushing. Nothing that jumps off the table, but he had 15 touchdowns. That's just called doing your job, getting the ball in the end zone and putting points on the board. In a lot of fantasy leagues, he's probably a late round running back off the board, and he had tremendous value. He was an easy flex play or an RB2 there at the end of the year. So I think him just coming in and doing a job with that explosive offense with as many weapons as they had, I think he was easily one of the biggest surprises at the running back position.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a big part of his role is allowing them to take some of the punishment away from Kyler Murray. I mean, having somebody that can come in there and get those tough yards, rushing the ball, is less wear and tear that he's going to have on him. And as we've seen this season, he can get injured.
Yeah.
So having that second guy to hand the ball off to when you need those short yards, that's huge for the Cardinals.
For my pick, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. The answer is Jamar Chase, offensive rookie of the year. I'm going to say that he's kind of slept on by Bengals fans right away because we needed we wanted Penei Sewell. Thank God we didn't draft Penei Sewell and drafted Jamar Chase instead. Even preseason, he had a bunch of drops. He started talking about, the football doesn't have white lines on it, so I can't see it very well. Didn't seem to affect him that much. So I'm just going to keep it at that. Jamar Chase, obviously, hopefully he continues to be as good as he is and being the primary receiver on a tremendous Bengals receiving core. I'm a Bengals homer, and I have no reservations about that. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going, man. It's pretty unprecedented times when you're a Bengals fan right now because you've literally went through a range of emotions in the last 2 years. So that's the greatest thing about football, man. Moving on down the list of awards, I think we're all going to agree on the answer to this question. But what was the best game of the year? I'm sure we don't even have to answer this question, but we're going to do it anyway. Coop, go ahead.
Yeah, I got Chiefs and Bills, that playoff game. I mean, instantly, I text both of you guys as soon as it ended and said that's the greatest football game I've ever seen. The records that were broken, the quarterback play on both sides of the ball, the lack of defense or lack of good schemes, whatever it was that allowed that game to keep going the way it was going, it was just amazing in every facet. If you haven't watched that game, you need to find it and you need to watch it today.
ESPN's got to be coming out with the 30 for 30, 13 seconds tomorrow. I mean, that's going to go down in history.
Yeah, there's not much left to say about a game like that. I will say this. I was watching it in my living room, wife, kids already in bed. I'm sure that my wife was in here like, what is he yelling about in there? Like the Bengals aren't even playing, but I was just in disbelief. Like no other game in the history of games had me in the surrender cobra, just silent, looking at the TV, literally looking around at my couches with nobody there, just kind of in utter disbelief of what took place on that night. That's a game you wanted both teams to win. And it's just a matter of a coin flip. Patrick Mahomes gets into another AFC championship. But I don't think that's the last time, but we're going to see a really, really, really good football game between those two teams in the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah. And that game's probably going to change NFL rules next year.
Yeah, it will.
That's how great a game it was.
Yep.
For sure. All right, moving right along. We have the next NFL award be given out for the play of the year. The play of the year is the play that we've watched. You either seen it on social media or you watched it live. It's the play that sticks out in your mind as, wow, one of those kinds of plays. So what are your guys' play of the year?
Yeah, I got to go with week 10. And my play was so good that the only way you can find it in the stat sheet is with a penalty flag. Didn't even stand up. Robert Hunt, offensive lineman for the Dolphins, snags a screen pass that wasn't intended for him, a little off target, and he just takes off. And, you see a guy out there 300 plus pounds making the moves he's making. Then he gets hit, contorting his body in the air, reaching for the goal line. I mean, this is one of the most memorable pictures in NFL history. I might be blowing it up a little bit, but you got to see it. It's amazing. And I just love any time a big guy gets that opportunity. Unfortunately, ineligible receiver. There was a penalty on the play. It didn't stand. It was off or not, but still just an amazing play. I can watch it over and over again.
Everybody loves it when a big guy scores. There's something about it. It's got a nuance. It's not supposed to happen. It's like finding a unicorn in a rainforest. It's just something that everybody loves seeing. So although it didn't count, I guarantee you he's still got that football hanging on his mantle somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
You think we're going to start seeing some more tackle-eligible screens in the future?
Oh, for sure. For sure. The Chiefs do a really, really good job of getting that part of their offense down toward the red zone, especially inside the 3 or 4. That's always an option for them. They do a really good job of it.
Yeah. Well, for my pick, I'm going to break Frank's heart. I'm going to go with Aaron Donald's play to win the Super Bowl. Not really a big flashy play, but really the poeticness about it to me is what just speaks out to it. So, 4th and 1, late in the 4th, you get the stop, you're going to win the Super Bowl. Pretty simple. And everybody knew what they were going to try and do. And Aaron Donald, being Aaron Donald, just creates havoc. And the fact that as you watch the replay, Frank's going to argue he's offsides, blah, blah, blah. But he was making contact with Joe Burrow in under 2 seconds. We can talk about the Swiss cheese line, but the guy beat the guard off the line. The center was there to help double, and he beat the center. He beat 2 guys in the biggest play of the year to cause Joe Burrow to have no time to find a wide open Jamar Chase as Jalen Ramsey falls down. I think, I don't want to say he single-handedly won the game for them, but in the most important play, he single-handedly took care of business. I think that is the best play by far of the year.
Yeah, I think Aaron Donald is a great player. Don't get me wrong, but that play, especially after you watch the replay and see Jamar Chase running down the field after Ramsey falls down, knowing that if Burrow has another step, he could just turn the ball loose and he's stride in the end zone, touchdown, Bengals win the Super Bowl. But things happen,
Aaron Donald
football's
happens.
football. Aaron Donald happens. But for my play, I'm going to stick with the orange and black team. I have to go week 17. Jamar Chase's took a 12-yard curl route, 72 yards to the house. I think that play, it may not jump out on paper as being like a fantastic play. He's had a couple more. I've seen a bunch more plays in the NFL this year, but I think that play alone is what sparked the Bengals Super Bowl run. Week 17 against the Chiefs, arguably the best team in the AFC the last, 2 or 3 years, at least, against Patrick Mahomes. You mount an insurmountable comeback to beat them, clinch the division. There's, memes and photos of, Chase with the ball in his hands, running up the field with 7 Chiefs defenders around him, just hauling ass down the field, 72 yards to the house. That changed the game. That changed the season for the Bengals. And that's why it's my play of the year. Like I said, there might be better plays. I really, really do like the offensive lineman scoring, flipping, twisting, torquing, whatever you call it. That's a great play, but didn't mean anything. This meant something for a team that has been struggling for a lot of years. So that's my play of the year.
Yeah, Jamar Chase won me a lot of money with that play. That was week 17, 50 points in the fantasy championship. Talk about clutch.
All righty, fellas. We got 2 more awards to give out today. The next award is going to be which non-playoff team from 2021 do you think could make a run at the Super Bowl in 2022?
Yeah, I got to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. They were right there this year. Right? We've already talked about it. They were a tie away from being in, and they were one of the best offenses in football. They were number 4 in offensive yards per game, number 5 in points per game. They lost a lot of close games, 5 games by 7 points or less. They had better point differential than both the Raiders and the Steelers, who made the playoffs over them. This is already a playoff team that just didn't have circumstances fall the right way. I think Herbert is the franchise quarterback, and I don't mean for LA. I mean in the NFL right now. I think Herbert's the guy going forward. I think if I'm starting a franchise today, Herbert's my number 1 pick. He's 1.01. The offensive line's still top 10, but the defense needs help. They got stars. You know, they have Derwin James. They have Bosa. They got to build around them. 2 or 3 players away. A couple names here I think could make huge differences for them in free agency. Akeem Hicks and Tyrann Mathieu. I think if they get those 2 guys, this is a Super Bowl team. I think both are very realistic. They're inside their cap space, and they don't have to be elite on the defensive side of the ball. The Rams were 15th this season, and the Bengals were 17th. I mean, there's your Super Bowl teams. You don't have to be at the top of the league on the defensive side of the ball to win championships.
Yeah, that kind of goes against the mantra of defense wins championships. And I'm going to cut in front of Dave because I have the same team that you have, Coop. But just to reiterate a couple of things that you said, you know, they were 4th in the NFL in passing yards. Like you said, Justin Herbert is a really, really, really good quarterback. He can sling it with the best of them. 3rd in passing yards per game, almost 30 points a game, and that's 4th in the NFL for a team that didn't even make playoffs. Like you said, defense is a big building category. I think to improve a defense, you don't have to remodel an entire defense. You know, if you look at somewhere like the Bengals, they did it through the draft. They signed Trey Hendrickson, a couple other, I would call mid-tier defensive linemen and defensive backs. Our defensive backs for the Bengals weren't great. And I think the Chargers, with the market they live in, being, you know, right next door to the Rams, that's a very favorable place for a free agent to want to go. I don't think they're going to have to do much convincing to improve their defensive side next year. But they're also my pick. If they can make it through their division, they're also my pick to make a run in the Super Bowl next year.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to take the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh.
I don't know why, but I love them throughout this year, especially when they went on their little run, 8-0 run there. I mean, granted, they were playing weak competition. Absolutely floored when Flores got fired. No idea what was going on there, but you know, I think the Dolphins have all the pieces on offense. At least they have. I mean, we got to figure out what Tua it is, and Myles Gaskin is a serviceable back, but you know, Jalen Waddle, you know, before Jamar Chase did his thing against the Chiefs in Week 17. Jalen Waddle was probably the rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year. And then, I mean, Devontae Parker is a trusted vet. Mike Gesicki's coming into his own at tight end. And then, you know, our personal favorite, mine and Frank's, not Coop's, but they didn't even have Lynn Bowden this year. And he's kind of the question mark, you know, maybe kind of plays like a Tyreek Hill, just an all-around weapon. But, you know, I like Mike McDaniels. I think he's going to come in and he has a good fit with the team. And their defense is there. And, you know, the division's pretty weak. The Bills were good at points through the season. They thought we thought who they were. They played like we thought they were. And then they played times when they played bad. The Patriots are a huge question mark. And I think, you know, Bengals proved it. You just get to the dance, anything can happen. You can rattle off 3-4 wins in a row, and I think the Dolphins are definitely a team that if they can just have a better start, not go 1-7 to start the year, they can make some noise and get to the Super Bowl with the right leadership.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Dolphins are they're just waiting for something to spark them. Like, they're just waiting for that one thing to happen, and it could have been the Brian Flores thing. Maybe, as you know, in our opinions, you know, we've talked about this before. You know, Brian Flores is a great coach. Obviously, doing something right to even have the Dolphins in the conversation of even talking about winning a Super Bowl. But maybe a new coaching change, new coaching staff. You know, you change the culture. You get with Tua and let him be, you know, national championship Tua again. Which we all know that doesn't always translate to the NFL. But now he's obviously a very, very, very good quarterback and is capable of winning NFL football games, especially with, you know, Jalen Waddle, like you said, Lynn Bowden coming through. He's have yet to have a season, but we know personally how good of an athlete Lynn Bowden is. We've seen, you know, players like him go to the NFL, be very successful. One being Deebo Samuel, like we mentioned earlier. But that's a great pick in my opinion. All right, so we're going to move on to the final topic, the final award for today's show. With all this talk about new coaches in the NFL, we're going to give out the award for the coach in the NFL that is brand new to their team that's going to make the biggest turnaround in 2022. In year one, not over time, because we know that in the NFL, coaching is a revolving door. But in year one, who's going to make the biggest improvements for their respective teams?
Yeah, I think this one is pretty easy in my opinion. It's Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. You can't do much worse than last place. 32nd in points per game, 28th in scoring defense, and a negative 20 turnover ratio. There's no way a team can win with those numbers, but I think Peterson coming in can improve on every single one of those. He's won before with what we know was mediocre quarterback play. Now that we've seen Wentz after Peterson and outside of Philly, we know that he isn't the MVP candidate that we saw in that Super Bowl season. And after he went down, Peterson kept winning with Foles. He turned Foles into a $28 million a year quarterback who's now maybe second string in Chicago. We don't even know what Foles is anymore. And he's a Super Bowl champion with Doug Peterson. So I think that just his ability to develop that team is going to be huge and turn them around. I do think that's the weakest division in football. We know the mess that the Texans are. The Colts have strengths, but I don't think they know the direction they want to go yet. I don't know that Wentz is the long-term answer there. Like we talked about earlier in the show, they're waiting on those moments, and they need somebody to step up. And I think Tennessee's past their window. I think Tannehill's getting older. I think he regressed this season. We saw Derrick Henry start to show some signs of breakdown for the first time. And I think Jacksonville's in a good spot to turn things around.
All right, Dave, who do you think is going to make the best or the biggest turnaround for their team in 2022?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Nathaniel Hackett for the Denver Broncos. I think he's coming into, Vic Fangio was a good coach, good defensive guy, one of the best defenses in the league. So he's coming in with a lot more to work with than a Doug Peterson to start with. I mean, you got the two-headed monster of Melvin Gordon and, I'm blanking on his name, the rookie.
Williams.
Yeah,
UNC
Javonte
guy.
Williams. But their wide receivers got a good core of young wide receivers. I mean, you think about it, they're a quarterback away, and they're a team that is hot and heavily tied to an Aaron Rodgers, and there's a lot of quarterbacks that might be moved this offseason that the Denver Broncos are going to be a consistent team that we hear are the ones that are shopping. So, you guys have talked about the Chargers. You're thinking they're going to be the team that can make the Super Bowl run. Let's not forget, they're the Chargers. The Bengals might have broken the mold for them, but they're a team that just seems to, even when they have it all figured out, it seems like they just kind of crumble there at the finish line. And the Chiefs, we finally saw it this year where they're not invincible. They can be taken down, and I think the Broncos, they're one player away from making a legit Super Bowl run in that division and conference.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a very good point.
I think that Hackett may have got the job because of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, a lot of people have that same line of thinking there. And I love Javonte Williams. Saw a stat on him. 31% of his rushes, he forced a missed tackle. That is the highest percentage in the NFL since Marshawn Lynch in 2016. Guy's a stud, and he's going to be great for whoever they get to fill that quarterback role. He's really going to elevate that backfield. I think Denver can be really good.
Yeah, I know Denver was definitely the fantasy football conundrum the entire year of, do I start Melvin Gordon or do I start Javonte Williams?
Yeah, fantasy football makes me want to pull my hair out, just to be quite honest with you. But, moving on, in my opinion, I think Brian Daboll with the Giants is going to make the biggest improvement, and here's why. Coop talked about the Jacksonville Jaguars being the bottom of the league, which they are record-wise. But when it comes to offensive production, there was one team worse than the Giants this year, and it was the Houston Texans. And I couldn't even name you, honestly, the Houston Texans quarterback for the most of the year.
Davis Mills.
Who's that? I don't know. Who cares? But with some considerably better quarterback play, and I don't think Daniel Jones is a bad quarterback. He's definitely not shown that he's a good one. But you have one of the top premier backs in the league in Saquon Barkley. When healthy, he's a threat with the ball in his hands at any point in time. Defensively, I think that they can definitely improve. But, with an offensive-minded person in there from the Buffalo Bills, I think the New York Giants are just going to make a huge leap. They won some games, but when you're averaging, like 15 points a game, it's not going to win in the NFL. And I think they're in a pretty favorable division with the Cowboys, who are the Cowboys. We them boys has been gone a long time ago. The Eagles are the team that made it out there last year. Then you have the Commies that are there too as well. All four teams are looking to improve. We don't really hear much chatter from the Eagles camp, but, the Cowboys are the Cowboys. They're always going to have, chatter surrounding their team. But, Washington's in the news a lot lately. I think people are sleeping on the New York Giants this year. That's just my opinion. With that being said, we're going to wrap up the episode number 1 of the TRIF3CTA Sports Podcast. I'm Frank. I'm here with my buddy Coop and Dave. Hopefully you liked it. Just remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like, and leave us a comment. You guys have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you.